Money, money, money. It takes money to compete. But how much of that money does Scott Frost need to build his offensive line?
You are Locked On UCF, your daily podcast on the UCF Knights, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on into Locked On UCF, your daily UCF podcast. I'm your host, Mike G, and thank you so much for making Locked On UCF your first listen of every single day. Joining me, as he does every single week, is my good friend Smith from Locked On the Portal. He is the guy tracking all the portal movements, but also talking to the recruits about what's important right now in college football recruiting. What are they looking for from teams? All the movement. Brian Smith is the guy. We say it at the end of every show. Going over to Locked On the Portal and give him a listen every single day as well. On today's show, Brian, we're going to be talking about the cost of building a good offensive line, where UCF stands in terms of talent, and what they can do with that talent this year. Let's start with the cost of building a line. Before we started recording, you mentioned to me what top dollar is right now in college football for a good offensive lineman. What is UCF up against when it comes to trying to recruit the best lineman out there? Are you paying quarterback money? Are you into seven figures for a top lineman, or are those guys going into six figures, five figures? Talk to me, my friend, about building a good offensive line and what the tax is going to be for Scott Frost and UCF.
Well, Miami, if you believe what everybody said, and I've heard it from multiple people, $2.5 million for Jackson Cantwell, the top recruit in the country, offensive tackle, 7.5 out of Nixon, Missouri. That's per year. So wow. I'm not saying you got to get Jack. Like, he's one of the rarest players I've ever seen. Great kid. His dad and his mom are Olympians in like track and field. Like, he's from a freaky family, but for the elite offensive tackles, brother, you're throwing down. Here's the bad part. You're throwing down more for less time for a guy out of the portal. Maybe a guy that doesn't have as much upside. A guy that was a starter at a mid-level program in the ACC like Virginia or something is going to get $1 million plus, especially with the way Texas Tech, ironically, a Big 12 program is throwing around money. They spent more than anybody this offseason, for what I'm told. So if you're going to build an offensive line, you're going to have to hit on a few gems. I know UCF is not in the Texas Tech / Miami realm with NIL, but they got to find some more cash to give to some of these guys, because offensive line's where it's at. You and I cover the SEC. We cover programs around the country, and like Auburn plays Baylor game one. Baylor's got serious NIL money. That's another Big 12 team that UCF fans need to become familiar with. Like, that's a private school with a ton of cash. They can go get a kid. They can compete with Oklahoma, Texas A&M for recruits. So I think that UCF, I'm glad you brought up this subject specifically with the O-line. Like, looking at their class, there's nothing wrong with their class in general. They need more high-profile guys, blah, blah, blah. That's fine. And they just got an offensive lineman out of Massachusetts just a couple of days ago, this Ahmad Williams kid. I don't know much about him because he's from the Northeast, but they need to get guys like that as their bottom end. And you've got to get 4 or 5 guys a year, win with depth, win with consistently bringing in offensive line, because you're not going to spend $2.5 million on Jackson Cantwell. I get it. Yeah. By the way, I like the other kid they've got, Keziah Charlton, the other kid out of Brunswick, Georgia, another tackle. So they might be okay at tackle this year, which is the really good news. But now you need more volume. And it needs to be that way every year. Win with junior seniors and fifth-year seniors, because I know UCF ain't going out and spending like 1.3 or something on some right tackle. They're not. So they're going to have to figure that out, because the elite programs, Texas, Georgia, schools like that are, and now it's really went into the Big 12 where they got a ton of money. Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, Baylor, TCU, BYU. These schools got cash, man. So it's going to be interesting to see what UCF does to counter.
Yeah, you mentioned Cantwell, the number 1 overall recruit in the class of 2026 as an offensive tackle. But, you know, you got guys like Zion Giaz, Kevin Brown, Darius Gray out there. These guys are being snatched up by the better programs in college football right now. Humor me for a second, Brian. It feels, though, as if offensive line is one of those positions which opposite of the skill positions where those guys might be more apt to go to a program like UCF if all the other conditions are right. So UCF may not be
100%.
that program, but you can block your guy anywhere. UCF's in the Big 12, so it's not like you're going to be blocking against nobodies week in and week out. You're going to be on Fox. I think they've got the main Big 12 contract for football. You're going to be on national TV every single weekend showcasing your stuff. And I think that helps UCF a little bit in terms of trying to land those guys before you have results to sell.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I mean, they gotta do something this year. It's Scott's first year back in UCF's realm of like trying to get the excitement going again and all that. Of course, 2017, 18, like they were really good. But now I have no idea what they're going to run and how, like which players. I need to see it. I don't care what depth chart they throw. I need to see it. And I think recruits are there too. So they're starting to pick up momentum with recruiting. They've added a bunch in the last month or so. Okay. But those linemen to like get you over the top, look, the same programs end up in the final 8 spots pretty much. And if you go look at the O-line recruiting, I'm doing a series on this on the portal. You go O-line, D-line recruiting, who are the top 10 programs, let's say, over the last decade? It's the same ones you see in the finals of the top AP poll, college football playoff poll. O-line, D-line recruiting is the end-all be-all.
Yeah.
Those kids, they don't trend down to like an elite corner might go to UCF. I don't know what that deal with. The tackles, especially, it is a itty-bitty group. So I don't know why that is. But UCF's going to have to figure that out, even if they just go buy one kid every 2-3 years. I can see that as viable. And then you just develop the rest of the kids, and that's fine. Like the 2 kids that got committed, that's great. But getting that one guy also gives you the political capital to go get another one later. You got to get when to get the second one, as the saying goes.
You said the buzzword there, development, right? In
100%.
These first 2 years, Scott Frost is going to have to find a way to develop guys at a high level. Now, if you can develop a guy into the NFL draft anywhere, right? If you're UCF and you can put a lineman in, kids still want to see that. The ultimate goal is still that NFL money. I don't care how many college dollars are flying around. Ain't nothing like the dollars, the billions and billions that are flying around at the NFL level, right? So they want to get to the league. They want to get to the big contracts, at the pro level, and that's still their dream. These kids still dream of playing on Sundays, although Saturdays have become increasingly lucrative for college football players in today's game. But how hard is it to develop linemen in today's college football? Of all the positions on the field, it's probably the most physically developmental position. And what I mean by that is when you come in, there are very few guys that jump from high school to a Power 4 conference and are ready physically to play at that level. It takes them a whole offseason. If they don't at least get a spring, they're not going to be physically ready to play Big 12 football.
That is absolutely true. For every Jackson Cantwell who benches over 500 pounds already, there's a bunch of kids that are 290 to 330 pounds that are nowhere near ready, and they got to change their bodies completely. They haven't had training. They haven't had the right nutrition. And then you get into the technical part on top of that. So, especially offensive tackle. That's why you can't miss on any given year. You want to be starting juniors, seniors, fifth-year seniors. If you got freshmen out there at offensive tackle, do you feel good about your quarterback safety on 3rd and 7?
Yeah, probably not. No, probably not. Yeah.
That's the difference between winning and being a big-time program. When UCF was really good just under 10 years ago, they hit on a couple of kids that were under the radar at several spots, but they also did a really good job of fitting them into their scheme. They did every little detail right. Like, to do that again is going to be hard. It would be easier to add a few more elite kids and do the development thing. Like Frost Group did unbelievable stuff.
Yeah.
But again, is it likely to happen that way again? No, especially now that you're in a more difficult league where everybody's paying out the wazoo because they got oil money over there in that Texas area.
Look, we know it's going to cost some money to get that talent in there, but where does the talent stand? And now in terms of their Big 12 peers. We'll talk about that next on Locked On UCF. This episode of Locked On UCF is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. There's nothing like the NBA playoffs. And look, the finals are almost over with the Pacers down 3-2. But all the intensity, the buzzer beaters that are that will be coming, you want to get in on that action before it's all over and go see that live. Prices on the app usually drop a little closer to tip off. So if you're in the area of one of those NBA Finals games, see if you can land yourself a ticket, but use the Game Time app. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, low prices guaranteed. What time is it? Game Time. The cost is what it is. But where does UCF stand right now in terms of talent? Before we started recording, I have you on because you're not afraid to say the hard thing. You're not afraid to say the thing that is maybe true, but that fans do not want to hear. For all intents and purposes, I would label the task that Scott Frost has in front of him at UCF as a rebuild. You think UCF may be bottom 5 in terms of talent, in comparison to their peers. Talk to me about where they're at right now and how far Scott Frost has to close the gap before we see some truly competitive UCF teams.
I think that can start in 26, especially the back half. There's two parts to it. Number one's installing your systems. Everybody's got to go through it. So even if you got elite talent, there's going to be hiccups in year one. I don't care if you're Ohio State or USC in their prime. It doesn't make any difference. It's part of it. But what we were just talking about in round one, linemen. How many guys do they have beyond their starters if a really key player goes down, a D tackle like Walker? Big John Walker is a kid I know. He was a highly recruited kid. He could have went to Ohio State. He picked UCF. He's probably the highest ranked kid they've ever signed, if I was to guess. If John goes down, who's the guy behind him? Do they have that depth, especially like playing Orlando? Like I used to cover UCF, playing Orlando. That down on the field before the game, I just walk out onto the field to take some photos, and I'd be sweating to death. So I'm sure it's hard. Do they have the depth to handle those fourth quarter games, any overtime games, especially later on in the year after the attrition is taken on? I don't think so. West Virginia, UCF, Cincinnati, Arizona, those programs, maybe Houston, would be the programs probably have the least amount of NFL talent right now in the Big 12. You could argue some others, but those are probably the ones. And like BYU may look that way at parts of the time this year. We'll talk about that maybe a little bit later, but their quarterback situation has taken a very bad turn. So It may not matter what else they've got going on. That guy's in a lot of trouble. Mm-hmm. But if UCF has the kind of lack of depth that I think they have on both sides of the ball, you're just looking at Lady Luck as the number one factor for you having a good season, and you never want to leave it up to somebody else. I mean, it's crazy how important luck is, but like last year, Ohio State and Notre Dame had multiple O-line starters out, and they still made the title game. That's just recruiting. So can you get enough depth from some of these guys that were under the radar and some of the misses that Gus had along the offensive line and stuff? Like they did a pretty good job with it, but they lost some kids. One of their guys actually transferred to Florida State. That's my concern. I think skill-wise, UCF's a lot better than what people might think.
Right.
Yeah, this has always been the case. Florida, I mean, I've lived in the Orlando area, Tampa area, I-4 quarter. There are so many three-star kids that have tremendous upside, but they might have played at a smaller school and not as much exposure. They come in and get the right nutrition. Like UCF is famous for it. They'll be fine at DB and receiver talent-wise. I'm not worried about that. It's in the trenches and depth. So quarterback, I need to see what Scott's going to do before I comment on that at all. But I'm really worried about the trenches.
Yeah, look, Gus famously liked smaller linemen. He even more famously did a terrible job recruiting linemen to Auburn before he left.
Oh, that's infamous. That's not legendary. That's infamous.
Yeah, right. My good friend Andrew Gluchov, comes on the show regularly. bemoaned quite often the state of the UCF offensive line. Look, you've got some quarterbacks back there that, they're going to play better if you protect them. And I know you could probably say that for almost any quarterback, but there are some guys who operate on another level who, hear me out. It's a lineman's job to protect their quarterback, but a good quarterback protects his linemen in a way. They get rid of the ball quickly. They go through their reads and progressions, and they're not asking the linemen to block for unnecessary amounts of time while they try to find the guy downfield. So it's going to be important, I think, to stack the deck for around the QB for now until you find your guy, and that will help you stabilize, I think, what your floor and your ceiling. Because right now, I don't know if anybody imagined UCF only winning 4 games going into last season, but that's a pretty low floor, right? Like 4 games, come on, man. At a place like UCF, the floor should never be 4 wins. I think they've got to make progress toward raising that floor, Brian, to the 6 or 7 win range for now. And ultimately, the goal is to maybe do what Arizona State did and try to go in underrated and a little undermanned and make the college football playoff. I mean, they won the whole damn Big 12. So we'll see how they can do that. But look, bottom 5 in talent doesn't always mean a bottom 5 in results. However, you've got to have goals for year 1. It may not be the college football playoff, but goals are important. We want to talk about what's realistic and what's not for UCF next on Locked On UCF. Vegas set the over-under at 5.5 for this UCF team and Scott Frost's first year back in Orlando. Is this realistic? Is this a realistic goal to make a bowl game? I believe that it is a realistic goal. You have some other feelings about how this team may fare based on where they're at currently. But, in looking at that schedule, there may be some early season opportunities there. If they could log an out-of-conference win versus North Carolina, I think they may be able to find enough momentum to get to that 6 wins and hit the over. Not only for UCF fans, but for bettors.
Well, that's true because like week 3, they should win their first 2 games, but week 3, Carolina comes to town. They're in rebuild mode too. We have no idea what Bill Belichick's crew is going to do. But then just hear me out. You've got Kansas State on the road. They've got an NFL level quarterback in terms of talent. Got the most experienced quarterback in the league the week after coming to UCF, the Daniels kid from Kansas. The next week after that, you got to win. It's Cincinnati on the road. They stink. Then you go and host what Bill Steele says is the worst team in the Big 12 in West Virginia. So It's kind of like it's real highs and lows. But then you got Baylor on the road. You got Texas Tech on the road. You got to go to BYU. Like there's some randomness. Oklahoma State's another one that might be bottom 5 in the league this year. We'll see. But like they play 3 or 4 really high-end teams plus Carolina. So you can't have any of that in-between stuff where you just lay an egg. Like that weekend, you're like, how did we lose that? You, as a UCF fan, you cannot walk out of the stadium saying, how did in the world we lost to Houston today? That they play Houston at home this year. That cannot happen. They cannot lose that. I still think if you said, Brian, who's the most important team for UCF to win? It's the Carolina game because they got K-State on the road after that. And they got Kansas that way. They need some momentum because the K-State Kansas games will be tough. Both those teams, I got really good quarterbacks. They're deep into their systems. Like they know what they're doing. Those will be hard games. So that UCF UNC game is massive for the Knights.
Yeah, I agree. Now, again, Andrew and I argued about the importance of this game. Some people feel since it's not a conference game, it's not important. I think in terms of momentum, if your goal is not win the Big 12, your goal is get to a bowl game, hit that over, then that game is massively important because before you get into that conference schedule, man, you've got to get every single game that you can get. Now, going back to that schedule, as you mentioned, BYU's quarterback, Jake Retzlaff, has found himself in some trouble, some big trouble. The subject matter surrounding the trouble that he's in is sensitive, so I don't really want to get into that. But I don't expect him to play football this season. I think BYU should err on the side of caution and sit this kid until that has been adjudicated. They have some very, very specific morals that come along with being an athlete and a student at BYU. So hopefully that applies there. But suddenly without him, I think that game looks a little bit more favorable. Not.
Oh, it's huge difference because he's a good player.
Yeah.
He could play.
So. Yeah, he's good. So, you take him out of the equation. You talked about West Virginia and the rebuild that they will be in with Rich Rodriguez returning there. So opportunity. Houston, which is the space game this year, I believe. UCF has never lost one. They've never lost the space game. So I personally think that there are some good opportunities for Frost to get in there. And in our first two segments, we talked about essentially buying talent and then where the talent stands. But as much as there is a talent gap, if you're Scott Frost, you can close the coaching gap, Brian. You can close the coaching gap, and you can just surprise these guys, man. And especially in year one before there's a bunch of tape, right? This is why I think that UNC game is so important. It's early in the season. You maybe don't have to show off a whole lot before that game. You can come out and you can surprise a team coached by Bill Belichick, which will get your program some needed exposure and possibly put you in a better position 3 games into the season than you had anticipated.
Yeah, that's why I like the UNC game for that momentum, brother. I'm on the same page with you. And here's the biggest advantage. Fans may not think about this, but I guarantee you Scott Frost and his staff do. You go 6-6. You get to a bowl. You get all those practices at the end of the year, and you have your kids motivated going into the offseason. May not be the greatest bowl game in the world, but it's a bowl game.
It's more time to evaluate. Yep.
And, I mean, that's bottom line. And you can sell. In year one, we went to a bowl game to recruits and to the players, and I hate saying this word out loud, transfer portal. That thing haunts my dreams, but it's part of it. You have to be ready for that because the most important year for a new coach is year one going into year two, that offseason. It's going to be a heck of a lot easier if you win that Carolina game, get some momentum, and find a way to get to a bowl, to go into that offseason, have a good recruiting class, finish out the portal, and then get into spring practice. Then maybe you make some noise in year two. That's probably more realistic. Again, your system's in place. Your schedule will flip around. It'll be different. You'll have probably a way easier schedule in terms of the quarterbacks you're playing, like Kansas State, Baylor, Oklahoma State. Some of these teams, like they got seniors or NFL level quarterback. That's hard, man. That's really hard. So let's see what UCF can do this year. Anything you get out of this season, to me, is a bonus, but making a bowl is possible. UNC game is huge.
Yeah, look, lay a good foundation for the years to come in year one. This year will be an important building block, I think, for UCF as they move forward. But, it's the offseason right now, so a lot of the things we're talking about are hypothetical, and we're looking down the road and projecting. But, if you're a UCF fan, if you're part of the UCF administration, it's important to remember that this is no doubt a rebuild, and it's going to take time. So it's not going to look perfect in these first years. But if you're Scott Frost, you still have to deliver some signature moments, right? You may not be able to win the whole thing, but you got to deliver signature moments. And I think that Arizona State kind of laid the blueprint for the fact that this league is ultra competitive, despite what we in the media might think is the best order of finish in the preseason. We vote on these things year in and year out when we head to media days, but we can be wrong. And we were all wrong about Arizona State. They went out and they won the whole thing and probably had one of the more competitive, if not the most competitive, college football playoff games that we watched all playoffs last year. So after it was over, Kenny Dillingham did something that I think that I want to end the show on, and that's he got on the mic and he said, please give us money, because he knows that what they did last year is not going to be repeatable if you cannot establish a good financial base for recruiting. He understands it. He talked about how much it's going to cost to go out and find his quarterback, right? The next Cam Scatterboo. Well, they developed that guy, but is he there? Can we recruit him out of high school? It's going to take money. Yo, I'm talking about the Cam Scatterboo that you can see coming. The one that's the dude coming, the one with the 5 stars next to his name is coming out of high school. You want that guy, you got to pay. And if you're Scott Frost, if you deliver good enough results and show that you can be a good steward with what they have now, over deliver almost versus your resources and your talent right now, I think you'll see them entrust him with a lot more. The checkbooks will start to open, and UCF will be a program that can compete for years to come. Now, will he do it? We'll be here to talk about it certainly every single week during the season. Brian, as always, I want to thank you for joining me. Before we get out of here, tell people where they can find you.
Portal Podcast. You can download it on Spotify, Apple, Podbean, YouTube, or anywhere else. We talk recruiting, NIL, and transfer portal every day.
Guys, thanks for making Locked On UCF your first listen of every day. As Brian mentioned, go check out the Portal Show for your second listen. He's got the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. Be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to the college football landscape. And you can find them on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. You can find us here tomorrow on Locked On UCF.